One of the great things about this session is I get to tell my favorite Unitarian Universalist joke. Once there were a group of Unitarian Universalists and they couldn't agree about theology. So they decided to go to God to see if God could resolve their differences. But once they got there, there was a line. And the first two people in line were a Protestant and a Catholic from Northern Ireland. And this was during the Troubles and the war between Catholics and Protestants there. And the Catholic and the Protestant said to God, "Will we ever be able to get the Catholics and the Protestants to live together in peace in Northern Ireland?" And God said, "Yes, but not in your lifetime." Next, someone from the Jewish tradition and the Muslim tradition approached God and said, "God, will we ever be able to get Jews and Muslims to live together in peace in the Middle East?" And God said, "Yes, but not in your lifetime." Next, the group of Unitarian Universalists came up and said, "God, will we ever be able to get all Unitarian Universalists to agree on theology?" And God said, "Yes, but not in my lifetime." Well, that story tells you a lot about Unitarian Universalism, and it leads us to one of the main sources for our tradition. And the language goes, we believe in direct experience of that transcending mystery, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Direct experience of transcending mystery. When Leonard Bernstein was asked, "Do you believe in God?" he said, "No, I believe in something much bigger." That's what this idea of transcending mystery is. Something much bigger than our thoughts, bigger than our concepts, bigger than our ideologies or our theologies. It's something bigger. One of the images that I use comes from a folk tale that is told in India about the blind men and the elephant. And you may have heard this story, but I have sort of my own version of it that I like to tell in Unitarian Universalist churches. So there's a group of blind men that have never encountered an elephant, and they get a friend to lead them toward one. And as they approach the elephant, one grabs the elephant by the trunk and said, "Oh, so this is what an elephant is like. An elephant is like a hose." And another one says, "No, you're wrong," because they have the elephant by the leg. And they say, "No, you're wrong. An elephant is like a tree trunk." Someone else has the elephant by the ear. And they're saying, "No, an elephant is like a thin piece of paper." And someone has an elephant by the tusk and said, "No, elephant is sharp, like a spear." And another one has an elephant by the side and says, No, an elephant is like a big, strong wall." And another one has the elephant by the tail and says, "No, an elephant is thin, like a piece of rope." And when I tell this story to Unitarian Universalist congregations, I like to add another blind man who is off in the distance saying, "I don't feel anything at all." Well, the story points to that at the heart of our religion is direct experience. And we articulate what our direct experience is like in lots of different ways. In our church, we have people who don't feel anything at all. And some people who, use different images and different metaphors to describe a reality larger than ourselves. But what holds us together is we believe in direct experience. In other words, we don't believe in second-hand faith. The role of religion is not to read about somebody else's experience in a book and accept it, or hear somebody else's experience from the pulpit and accept it. We can read a book and we can listen to someone in the pulpit, but the goal is to lead us into our own direct personal experience of a reality larger than ourselves, an experience that is available in the present. We don't have to just read a history of other people's experiences. We can have an experience of our own in the present moment. It's not about reading what Jesus said or Moses said or any of the people who or Buddha said or Muhammad said. It's about reflecting on what we can say about our own direct experience of reality. Now, one of the traditions that's very important in in Unitarian Universalism is the via negativa. And the Via Negativa is older than the Christian tradition, and there's elements of it that are found in many different traditions all over the world. But the point of it is to say that we can't ever say positively what God is. As Abraham Heschel said, every statement about God is an understatement. So you can't say God is this or God is that, but you can state authoritatively what God is not. You can say God is not this, God is not that, and through a process of elimination, be led into spiritual experience. Now, there is a story that's told in the Hindu tradition that sort of gives us a vision of that. The story is that we are all like people in a room that's completely dark, and we're looking for the light, and we pick up a sock off the floor, a dirty sock, and say, it's not this. Or we pick up some towel that's on the floor, and we say, well, it's not that. Or we pick up some old dirty clothes on the floor and say, not this. So we're going through the room going, not this, not that, not this. And all of a sudden our hand touches the light switch. And it's not the light switch either, but as we touch it, all of a sudden everything is illuminated. So the Via Negativa is about that experience of not this, not that, until we have our own direct experience of something illuminative, something transformative. And Simone Weil, one of the 20th century mystics, said, there are two kinds of atheism, one of which leads us to a clearer understanding of God. Or as we might say, there are two kinds of atheism, one of which leads us to a direct experience of transcendent mystery. So that's the goal. Now, this is not to say that that we always go to theistic metaphors. In Buddhism and Zen tradition, they say our words are a finger pointing at the moon. They are not the moon itself. So in a non-theistic tradition, we're still on a path towards some transcendent mystery. As a Quaker mystic, Robert Barclay, once said, the scriptures are a testimony to the fountain. They are not the fountain itself. So it's not about reading a story about a fountain in a book. It's about a direct experience. It's about drinking from the fountain of life. As the hymn says, come thou fount of every blessing. Or as another hymn says, wellspring of the joy within us. It's this experience that we're seeking. There's a very famous hymn in our hymn book Singing the Living tradition called Bring Many Names, which says that the most important, that we can bring many different names and many different metaphors in our search for transcendent mystery. Strong Mother God, warm Father God, but sometimes personal imagery is also limiting. So we use imagery from nature, a river, the sun, a rock, different imagery for that experience, which is bigger than imagery. So there's a part of Unitarianism that I'd be neglectful not to mention, and I'll frame it this way. I was once at a memorial service where a Methodist minister said that a teacher looks for God in her students, and a doctor sees God in her patients, and an environmental activist sees God in nature. And I would add, from a Unitarian Universalist perspective, and the abstract thinker sees God in abstract thought, because that is well and truly part of the Unitarian Universalist tradition. We have process theology, and we have Henry Nelson Wyman's creative theology. All of these theologies tend to lead to very abstract ideas about God. And without going into detail about these different abstract ideas, it's just another way of saying that our ideas aren't big enough to capture this transcending mystery. And we've got to find the language that works for us, that helps us express that direct experience. The Greeks spoke of logos. That's a Greek idea that there's order in the universe. We see it in the stars. There is logic to the universe. The Taoists speak of the Tao, the way. There's an order in nature. If we cooperate with it, it leads to the good. And in the Tao Te Ching, they say the Tao that can be named is not the real Tao. There's another translation that says, those who know don't say. Those who say don't know. I can't think of a more humbling statement for a preacher than that. Those who know don't say. Those who say don't know. So I share it in all humility, having already said a whole lot, because we can bring many names to this transcendent mystery, but perhaps the most profound experience of transcendence is felt in silence. As Meister Eckhart once said, nothing is so much like God as stillness. So let's end this session with a moment of stillness. Amen.